Centaur, your kind of company.
Tonight on CTV3 News, the controversy over the sugar legislation continues to brew. But does it all boil down to misconceptions? BSI ASR says they are not conveyors, so they can't pay out fair trade premiums. A stiff fine for two fishermen who broke the law. And the State Bank Enterprises Limited tells GOB to declare the recently unearthed definitive agreement null and void or else. These are some of the stories we have for you tonight in our newscast for Thursday, June 8, 2023.
Special guest in the audience tonight, legendary record executive, Mr. Clive Davis.
My voice is gone.
What?
You start the show tonight. No talking back. I'm your mother.
There's a boy I know. He's the one I dream of.
What's your name again?
Whitney Elizabeth Houston.
Wake up! It's on. It's on. Listen. How will I know if he really loves me?
My dream, sing what I want to sing, be how I want to be.
I say a prayer with every heartbeat.
Reach as big an audience as I can.
How will I know?
Common criticism of you, your music isn't black enough.
Look, I don't know how to sing black, and I don't know how to sing white either. I know how to sing.
I might have just heard the greatest voice of her generation.
Maybe.
Maybe. It's got to have a hook.
A hook?
Yeah.
I'll give it a hook.
Appreciating the reality of aging hospital infrastructure countrywide, while bearing in mind the increasing risk of hurricanes and floods, this UP administration has ramped up efforts to secure capital for new hospital infrastructure to be established in strategic locations. Earlier this year, we were most pleased to secure a $32 million grant from our partner, the Republic of China, Taiwan, to build a new hospital in San Pedro to serve Ambergiski and Kikaka. $32 million. Again, the UDP, they claim they put it into their budget for about 3 years, boasting that they will build the San Pedro Hospital. It was never built. It is going to be built by the People's United Party government.
Good evening with your news, also simulcast on Fiesta FM 106.7. I am Joanna Rodriguez. The newly implemented Belize Sugar Industry Regulations 2023 have been causing major controversy within the sugar industry since its announcement that GOB a few weeks ago. As we have reported, the regulations required that importers and exporters of sugar apply to the Sugar Industry Control Board annually for a license every year. In order to get that license, there are, however, various preconditions which have to be met by the applicant. Currently, as it stands, that regulation has been put on pause by the Supreme Court following a challenge filed by BSI ASR along with the Corozal Sugarcane Producers Association. Earlier this week, we heard from the Belize Sugarcane Farmers Association, who are the biggest proponents of the new regulation, as they explained the expected benefits of the regulations for cane farmers. This week, representatives from BSI ASR also visited our morning show, The Spirit of Belize, where they sought to correct what they describe as major misconceptions in the narrative surrounding these regulations. The challenge, according to Vice President of the International Relations for ASR, Mac McLachlan, was born from the fact that the regulation contravenes the rights of BSI ASR as an independent business.
It's very evident, I think, to any objective observer that these regulations are very targeted. They're aimed directly at our business. I think it's fairly evident. And we're not aware of, any other exporters who have to, or exporters of other commodities that have to go through such rigmarole, as it were, to manage their exports. Also, it comes with some very punitive damages, which include, the government or the minister can take seizure of our sugar and to dispose of it, which, in my book is a form of expropriation. So we decided that this, I think, not just for the defence of BSI, but I think for many other businesses in Belize, that such a blunt instrument as that, deserves to be challenged to check that the constitutionality of that law is acceptable and correct.
Among the major problems with the regulation, according to the Director of Finance for BSI, Sean Chavarria, are certain conditions which are almost impossible for the miller to meet.
When applying for their license in November, the crop would not have started. We don't know the tonnage of cane that each association will deliver. If you look, for example, what was provided as a production estimate last year by the SCPC of 1.38 million tons of cane, we might not even get around 1,050,000. And so just shows you the impracticality of it, trying to provide numbers when crop has not even started. And that could be used as a condition for not giving you a license. The big aspect we know, though, is about fair trade. And you have to be disclosing how much fair trade each association will get. That we cannot legally comply with because we are not in control of fair trade premiums. We don't collect it, we don't pay it. And so, moreover, we don't market fair trade in these markets that attract the premiums. So it is impractical, and legally we cannot pay something that we do not collect. And so that's the big challenge that we have with this regulation.
And while BSI ASR has been treated for the lack of transparency, Chavarria says there are aspects within the commercial agreement between the miller and farmer associations that deals with that matter, and so the regulation is simply overreaching and unnecessary in that regard.
If it was just a matter about transparency, right, the commercial agreement takes care of that because the commercial agreement stipulates what information we need to provide to the cane farmer associations to validate the cane payment, the net trip value. And so included in there are sales contracts, production records. In fact, on a monthly basis, even before the regulation came in, every month we would send a report and include the Sugar Industry Control Board of all the exports that we make. So the information is there. So in our view, that was unnecessary. But what the regulation seeks to do is compel BSI to pay the fair trade premium. And it's compelling us to do something that we legally cannot do. And so what will occur is that the regulation will find fault with us for that and therefore not grant us an
Your
export
exportation
license.
license.
And that's the key, because that interferes with our business. And it's asking us to do something that we, from a practical standpoint and legally cannot do, because we can't go to Tata and say, you have to give us the premium. Fair trade is a voluntary program. Tata and Lyle can decide who it wishes to purchase fair trade sugar from. It does so, it gets a lion's share of the fair trade sugar from Belize because of the relationship that it has with BSI for many years, and even pre-existed when ASR came in 2012. Fair trade has been here since 2008. So there's a long history there. And so that is really the crux of the matter. The government is trying to force us to do something that we cannot do. And if we don't do it, our business and really the whole economy will suffer as a result.
Thus, BSI ASR says the regulation is simply GOB's attempt to force its hand as it relates to payment of fair trade premiums to the BSCFA.
When you get government enacting legislation that is clearly aimed, and has been admitted so, I think, in the media, at dealing with a specific issue, which is that of fair trade premiums, well, I just think that's a dangerous road to go down, because what's next? You know, which other business will be next to have some kind of legislation attacking it? So, look, I think we're, and I often feel this way, I'm sure others don't agree with me, that I think sometimes we're the ones who are standing up for the future of this industry and trying to make it more viable and a better industry for everybody, for all stakeholders, by growing the pie here. The $320 million of investment we've made in this country have stabilized this industry. And I don't think I have to remind too many people the industry was on life support when ASR came here. We've managed to stabilize it, build a really good platform for the future. I just don't think it's right and fair that we should be targeted in this way.
The loss of fair trade premiums by the BSCFA, while regrettable, McLachlan says, is due to a breakdown in the relationship between the association and the buyer, and thus BSI ASR has no hand in that situation.
It's very simple. Tate & Lyle markets, sells fair trade sugar and provides premiums directly back to farmer associations with whom it has an agreement. That's it.
I would add as well, Kami, that what are the things required to facilitate the payment of fair trade premium? One, all the players in the supply chain need to be certified. So not only the Cane Farmer Association, but the mill has to be fair trade certified. Even though we don't get the premium, we want to have fair trade in Belize. And the trader has to be certified. So those three players have to be certified to be able to partake in fair trade. The second thing that is needed is that there has to be a commercial agreement between the association and the mill. And so with three associations, we have long-term agreement. With the BSCFA, we have a one-year interim agreement. And the final thing that is needed, because I think this is a part that's been left out, the final thing that is needed to facilitate the payment of those fair trade premium is an agreement or a letter of enhancement between the association and the trader who pays the premium. And that's the key there. Whoever is the party that is paying the premium has to have that agreement with the receiver. We don't pay the premium, so we don't have that direct agreement with the association, but the trader, in this case, Tate & Lyle, does. And that has to exist.
And just one last thing on all of this. The Tate & Lyle is trying to get back into the relationship that it used to have with the BSCFA. The principles that it's asking for are not rocket science. They amount to being truthful and respectful in communication, and I think some of the things that we've heard in the last few days demonstrate the need for that. And they're asking that there be collaboration with other industry stakeholders and with Tate & Lyle. I don't think either of those things are too difficult. And I'm really scratching my head and wondering why BSCFA is not prepared to endorse those ideas, particularly as other associations and BSI are all signed up to them. So I really don't. And in all the communication I've heard from BSCFA, they've never mentioned that. So I think that's strange.
While it's not too late for the BSCFA to regain access to fair trade premiums according to Chavarria, the regulation, however, is not the best way to do so.
The door is not closed on BSCFA to receive fair trade. In fact, that's what Tate & Lyle has been, in a meaningful way, trying to do. And as Mark mentioned, fair trade is trying to facilitate that process as well. So those principles that have been communicated to the BSCFA are principles which promote fair trade standards, right? So they have the implicit support of fair trade. And we have stated that we are fully prepared to sign up to those principles. And we believe the other associations have stated the same.
I have signed up to them.
And because they're not they're nothing that is, you know, unrealistic. There's nothing that's controversial about these principles. It's simply about ensuring that communication is truthful and respectful, that, you know, we work collaboratively to develop projects that help to create a more sustainable industry, that BSCFA you know, demonstrates a plan of how fair trade premiums are used, and you continue what, you know, what's called the PPRC meetings. None of these things are controversial. And if BSCFA were to sign up to it, that then paves the way for fair trade to come back to them. So the door is not closed on them when it comes to fair trade. But if they're trying to jam it through the regulation, then that really is not going to be the outcome, a positive one, because you cannot force a party who is voluntarily paying something to, you know, go and pay us to pay these premiums, because traders have options. They can go to other countries to source this sugar. And that's the concern, that if you continue this antagonistic route of forcing draconian regulation, that, you know, businesses can say, look, there's too much risk associated with beliefs, there's too much politics involved. We are probably best suited to go somewhere else and source this fair trade sugar. And that's not good for anyone.
Court session for this particular matter has been set for July 21st. Awaiting the result of the court hearing on the implementation of these regulations, BSI-ASR says they continue to work for the benefit of the industry. We asked them, however, what would come next if these regulations were to be in fact implemented, and if they subscribe to the comments of Minister of Agriculture Jose Mai, who indicated that any business not willing to comply with the laws of our country and decide to leave. With an investment of over $300 million in Belize, McLachlan says ASR not going anywhere.
BSI or ASR is not packing up and leaving anywhere with a $320 million investment. If Minister wants to take over this business, that's up to him. But we're not going anywhere. We're here to build the future of this business, and that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years. I think all of this is a smokescreen. It's not helping when it comes to tackling the real problems that underlie this business. I think many people in the sugar industry would acknowledge that. So, you know, as far as we're concerned, we're here to be good citizens in Belize. We will meet the law when, you know, as and when things come out of cases, etc., but we'll continue to protect ourselves under the law, as we have had to do in recent years. And what a shame, because in all that time we haven't been able to do what we should be doing as part of our day jobs, which is investing further in this business and making it stronger for everybody.
Notwithstanding the current situation within the industry, BSI, ASR, and the BSCFA also continue at odds over the signing of a long-term commercial agreement. In that regard, the mill says it is very interested in the implementation of a commission of inquiry into the industry, with the main target of modernizing the industry, which continues to be affected by the same old bottlenecks for several years. Despite insistence from the BSCFA, however, McLachlan says the mill is not prepared to share greater value, which would ultimately lead to bankruptcy.
we're quite interested in the idea of a commission of inquiry that with a focus not explicitly not on the commercial agreement, and that's the discussion we've had with government and cabinet. It's not about the commercial agreement. It's about modernisation of the industry, and that's what needs to happen. No mill could support the inefficiencies in the cane farm here. We have some of the lowest sugar cane yields in the world. What needs to change, and the farmers need support to do this, we need to improve productivity and efficiency in the cane farm, and that is the way that farmers will become more viable. Lots of ideas out there of how to do that, but I think, you know, rather than continue to focus on gaining a greater share of the pie, we should all be working together to grow the pie, and that's always been our mentality here. And we made it clear as part of the commercial agreement discussion from the outset, happy to simplify things, happy to offer audit rights, happy to do whatever the farmer BSCFA leadership want in the sense of more transparency, but we are not prepared to share greater value. And every proposal that the BSCFA leadership have come up with would have effectively bankrupted the mill. So I don't think that's in anyone's interest at the end of the day. So whatever happens throughout this discussion, that has not changed.
And in an effort to grow the industry to remain viable, BSI says it has been doing its part, and it is high time that farmers and even GOB also play its role.
The synergies that we've been able to take advantage of since ASR came into Belize has been significant. You know, we've been making significant investments in Belize to grow the pie. That's been our vision, our strategy. Rather than looking how we can divide or share the pie differently, we've sought to grow the pie, to generate more revenues, reduce logistics costs, so that at the end of the day there is greater value. And I think if you look back on all the different things that, you know, as an investor they have done, has ASR invested in Belize? The answer is yes. I don't think anyone can argue against that. Have these investments resulted in improved efficiency and productive? The answer is yes. If you look at the performance of the mill over the past 20 years, you would have seen a marked improvement with the investments that have been made to extract more sugar, to produce more value-added sugar. Have the farmers benefited from that? Absolutely yes. You know, we've been able to mill more cane over time, produce more sugar. In fact, some of the record prices that have been paid to cane farmers have been during the time since ASR came in. Even production, we've had record production. The top three, I believe, in our history has been during that time. So without a doubt, there has been a positive impact of that investment in Belize. And I think that's where a lot of the perhaps issues are coming about, because the approach has been, look, well, here you have a big company, they must can give something more, right? And I think that's been a big part of the problem that has faced this industry, that they, you know, see a multinational company and say, look, they can afford to pay us more, rather than looking at what are the issues we need to tackle as an industry. We believe that from our end, what the mill is supposed to be doing in terms of investing and improving efficiencies and trying to add more value, we've been doing that. But if you look at the other side, where what can we do to reduce farming costs, improve productivity, there hasn't been as much attention to that. And I think that's been a big problem. And I think that the government that's where a big focus needs to be. What can they do to help support the farmers to reduce their costs, to be more efficient? Because if farmers can reduce their costs, obviously they would have more money in their pocket.
Speaking now on the ongoing 2022-2023 sugarcane crop season, which has been ongoing for a total of 23 weeks, it is expected that milling will cease in the coming days as cane supply continues to pose a challenge.
We've had 2 consecutive meetings with all the leaders of the association and the SCPC and also the chairman of SICB. Our last meeting was on Monday, and the feedback was that there is sufficient cane for this week, not at the levels that we're accustomed, but that there's definitely an indication that, you know, it's becoming a struggle to get cane to the mill. And so we agreed to meet again on Monday to take stock once more. And I think perhaps at this date we'll get a very good indication when the crop might be winding down, because it's I think fairly evident. Every day we've had about 6 to 8 hours of out of cane. We have to stop and wait for cane to come. So that gives a sign that, you know what, we're probably approaching the end. And, you know, farmers, you're already hearing some groups are already wrapped up and closed off, and, you know, cutters are leaving. So I think we're getting close there, but, you know, we want to make sure that we get every stick of cane that is available. So, you know, for this week, we're pressing on. We'll meet again on Monday, and probably then we'll agree a date of when the crop will end.
As we have been reporting, the industry saw a reduction of over 20% in the production of sugarcane this year. This has been attributed mainly to the effects of climate change, which is affecting industries across the region.
Climate change is having a massive impact. We're working closely at the moment with the 5 Cs here to look at a climate resilience project that will come and help farmers. And we need to adapt practices, you know, to manage these new conditions. We don't control the weather. And frankly, we've seen this all over the world. The Mexico crop was much lower than they expected. Guatemala, the same thing. So yes, climate's playing a major role here. Especially to a rain-fed crop, because we expect everything to be the normal every year, and it clearly isn't anymore. So that again needs modernization, irrigation, it needs better drainage, it needs all kinds of things to ensure that we can continue to grow as a business. That's what we should be focusing on, Cami.
The industry stakeholders, however, can also do their part to ensure Belize remains viable amidst the effects of climate change, which is expected to persist in the long term.
The lack of adherence to a management information system here has been laid bare again this crop. The original SCPC estimate was 1.38 million tonnes of cane. Evidently, that isn't the case. We'll be lucky to do 1 million, and I hope we'll get a little more than 1 million.
Right.
But it's ridiculous at this stage in a modern industry that we have no idea how much cane there's going to be. How can we plan a crop in that way? And the fact that you know, the sugar industry management information system is still not being utilized. I think that deserves a few questions.
An official date for the close of crop is expected to be announced on Monday, June 12, 2023. Randolph Aragon 40 of Antelope Street, Belize City, and Vidal Orellano 30 of La Cruz Boulevard, Belize City, are in big trouble after a major bust of conch and lobster caught out of season and prohibited fish species. The bust was made by Fisheries Department officials on June 6 at 3:45 a.m. on a vessel located 1.5 miles south of State Key. Aragon, Oriana, and 37-year-old Easton Weir were jointly charged with using a vessel without a valid fishing license and pleaded guilty before Senior Magistrate Baja Showman. Although Weir told the court that he was not actually fishing at the time and was simply catching a ride with the others. Nonetheless, anyone found on a vessel conducting fishing operations that does not have a license to do so is liable. Aragon and Ariano was jointly charged as well with possession of 24 conch in closed season, that is, possession of 28 lobsters while in closed season, and 2 counts of possession of prohibited fish species for 23 angelfish and 58 filleted angelfish. For the conch, each man was fined $1,000 in cost of court and $50 for each conch, totaling $1,200, but each will pay half that amount for a total of $1,600 each. For the lobsters, both were fined $1,000 in cost of court and $50 for each lobster. The total would be $1,400 each, but each man will pay $700 for a total of $1,700 each. For the raw angelfish, each was fined $1,500 in cost of court and $1,000 per angelfish, totaling $23,000. Each man will pay a total of fine of $13,000 each. And for the filleted angelfish, each was fined $1,500 in cost of court and $1,000 per filleted anglefish for a total of $30,500 each. The fines are all due by November 30th. In default, 6 months imprisonment and distress. The court will take any valuables from their home and sell it to pay. Since Ariana and Aragon pleaded guilty, we saw the charges withdrawn from him and he was free to go. Today, the media was invited to a tour in Sartaneja village, the biggest and most engaged fishing village in Belize. The invite came from the Ministry of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management and its departments in collaboration with the Sartaneja Alliance for Sustainable Development. Notably, Minister Orlando Habet was present for the entire tour. The most imperative result of this long day trip is bring forth awareness about the importance of biodiversity and the importance of knowing how plastic pollution affects our way of life locally, regionally, and internationally. Both topics of biodiversity and plastic pollution are widely spoken of, but few times are really dissected into information that the public can divulge in and understand effectively. We will have full coverage of that tour in our Friday's newscast. Coming up next, we take you to a 2-day workshop where participants are tasked to come up with proposals to improve the coconut, pitahaya, and potato industries. Stay tuned.
If you're lucky, no matter what life hands you, you can always count on your closest friends to be there. Oh, thank you. My purse was exhausted. We are all blissfully unaware when our lives are about to change.
Life is full of surprises.
I'm ready to lose my virginity.
Excuse me?
I got the list.
What list?
There's a whole brouhaha at school about this MILF list.
For real?
Our lunchtime fodder is not usually this lowbrow, I swear.
Really? Who have you been eating with?
It's a big step up for Che and me.
I've been having exit out of grief sex. It's just sex.
Through all the chance that you've been out there, men have feelings too.
Life's too short not to try something new. And just like that, I realized some things are better left in the past. But maybe not everything.
I'm most pleased to report that the nation that we have been able to secure roughly $90 million for the construction of a new 150-bed modern national referral tertiary care hospital in Belize. Given the vulnerability of KHMH to hurricanes and floods, the strategic placement of this hospital in Bamapan represents an important part of our climate resiliency building strategy in the provision of health care.
Sign up for a Smart Share Plan and save big. Whether you're a small entrepreneur starting up your business, a student on a limited budget, or a family trying to save, this is the plan for you. With unlimited SMS, calls, and data, we help you save. Get up to 5 lines for as low as $30 per line monthly, only with Smart. Sign up today at any Smart showroom or sales manager countrywide. So get your business going, share more memories with friends, and be ready for the day with Smart.
Come on!
When When hungry or craving, when laughter or tears, enjoy the best snacking or flavors are here. Asadas, mocadas, chiladas, doradas, delicious for snacking, done right and done here. Anytime to Snackers.
Done right, done here.
LG dual inverter compressor cools air faster by operating at speeds as high as 120 Hz with more stability compared to conventional models. It also saves up to 70% more energy by operating at speeds as low as 10 Hz with more stability. It reduces torque vibration down to 40% for quiet outdoor unit operation. Stable operation with low vibrations also results in increased durability.
Noting the increasing demands for primary, secondary, and tertiary healthcare across the country, our administration has focused heavily on providing the delivery of healthcare services to Belizeans. As such, since coming to office, we have consistently expanded the delivery of primary care services through NHI. As you may recall, that it is in this financial year that the entire district of Farinjoak is for the first time being brought in with NHI. Increasing access to up to 40,000 Arinjokenyans. The year before, with the same budget that the UDP was using in Corozal for a small portion of the district, we expanded the full coverage of NHI in the Corozal district. So presently, we have almost 270,000 people that is going to be covered.
The Ministry of Agriculture is hosting today a two-day training workshop to develop specific action plan and pilot projects to improve the value chain for coconut, pitahaya, and potato. The workshop is being funded by the Japan International Cooperation Agency under the Advisory Services for Improving Agricultural Value Chain in the Post-COVID-19 Society in Belize. The objective of the workshop is to share the result of the value chain survey and develop the action plans using the SWOT analysis module and the project selection based on the evaluation criteria.
We are conducting a training in how to conduct and develop project proposals. So using different techniques, we're able to do situational analysis and develop action plans in support of three commodities, namely potatoes, pitahaya, and coconut. So we have a cross-section of different participants and stakeholders, and the idea is that each section or shareholder would be able to contribute from their standpoint, and we merge ideas and perspectives to be able to come up with a common denominator in tackling issues related to these three commodities that I just mentioned a little while ago. So we feel that we'll be having sufficient representation of the different commodities to be able to meaningfully come up with action plans that will impact the industry.
While the plans are still being formulated, by tomorrow's session, some will be presented to the participants.
We are developing, we're communicating, but we have not finalized per se the specific action plan, in that we are at the situational analysis point where we are looking at the existing conditions to be able to pinpoint specific interventions for these commodities. So this is a two-day event Today is the consultative aspect of it, and by tomorrow we should have concrete action plans to present for funding.
With the assistance of JICA's representative, Kenichi Machida, the plans that are being formulated will hopefully begin to turn the economy in the areas of coconut, pitahaya, and potato.
This is basically requested by the government of Belize to revive the economy which was damaged by the COVID-19. Since the agriculture sector is a key sector to develop the economy of Belize, so the government of Belize decided to improve the agriculture value chain to redevelop the agriculture sector. So they requested to the Japanese government, then the JICA responded to it. As a result, eventually we started this project.
The event is being attended by technical officers from the Ministry of Agriculture, lecturers from the University of Belize, financial institutions, processors, farmers, wholesalers, and retailer and other agriculture organizations. Facilitating the training are consultants from the Japan International Cooperation Agency. If by today, Thursday, the government of Belize has not publicly declared the recently unearthed definitive agreement with Portico Enterprises Limited null and void and undertakes to refrain from taking any steps to pass or enact legislation in furtherance of a said agreement, Stake Bank Enterprises Limited is going back to court to force them to do so. That is the open threat in a letter to Prime Minister John Brasenia by a former colleague turned Stake Bank attorney Glenn D. Godfrey, senior counsel, this week. Godfrey notes that the Dean Barrow administration formally approved Stake Bank for a cruise port project in January 2018, affirmed in a High Court ruling in 2021, which paved the way for judicial review of the decision of the National Environmental Appraisal Committee, NEAC, and the Department of the Environment, DOE, in granting environmental clearance in Portico Enterprises Limited, as well as the Environmental Clearance Plan ECP between Portico and DOE. Godfrey cautions that if this claim, which is still before the courts, is successful, Portico would not be cleared to operate lawfully, though would likely appeal. Senior counsel Godfrey cautions that without the government's undertaking, Stake Bank will go to court to protect its interests and reserves its rights, including suing the government for misfeasance and negligence and claim damages, interest, and cost. While the government has publicly said Cabinet is awaiting legal advice and so will not pursue the definitive agreement, which would likely be revised to remove the more offending provisions, including the 25-mile ban on other cruise ports, which would freeze out Stake Bank and Waterloo Enterprises, it has not definitively said it considers the agreement invalid, merely needing to be revised. Today, the Minister of Sustainable Development, Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management spoke about that revision.
The definitive agreement was there since the last administration.
But when you read it, when you were able to read it?
Well, when I saw it and went through it, I thought that something was wrong.
When was that?
Definitely. I think when all of us saw it for the first time, I wasn't privy to it before. But when I saw the pictures and I saw that the former minister has signed it, I said to myself, something must be wrong. When the news came out, and I think even Prime Minister Barrow mentioned that it was not brought to their attention, so that the former minister, in his view, did the wrong thing because it was not in his ministry to be able to have that authority to sign something that speaks about finance especially. But let us recall that there was another agreement that was signed during their administration, and that was one that now we are working with because we have managed to make different arrangements, which was the TNC agreement, where former Minister of Natural Resources, Ugo Pat, also signed. And the part that deals with the land was okay because he was the Minister of Lands, but he had no authority to say you do not have to pay for land taxes and stamp duty and the rest. So what Prime Minister Barrow said was right, but also he didn't mention that there were other agreements that they had signed that were also had some illegality in it.
While GOB is finding ways of revising some of the provisions in the existing definitive agreement, the leader of the opposition has written a sour letter to the Prime Minister. Shine Barrow alleges, and we quote, "Your public pronouncement in March 2023 that the definitive agreement is binding on your government because it was signed by the previous government is clearly contradicted by your Attorney General and your own past actions." And even though word is that there is a rift in cabinet because of the definitive agreement, today Minister Habet refuted those reports.
It was the cabinet that eventually retaliated or revolted.
Well, I haven't heard any thing about retaliation or revolting in cabinet, and I'm a member of cabinet, so I don't know where that came from. But in terms of what the leader of opposition is saying is that they have to look at what they did. What is it that they actually caused? It's something that we have inherited, and you and I know that any agreement that is signed out there, if you go against it, you will be taken to court. Some of them you go with it and you're still taken to court, maybe not by the one who got that agreement signed on, but by somebody else who has interest otherwise. Take, for example, the same issue with the ports. So one is looking at fault from one, the other is looking at fault from the other, and so it will be one turnaround.
Sorry, but as is right now, it is illegal, so are we seeing that the agreement will be at some point voided?
I am not certain that it will be voided, but I think that maybe that there will have to be some changes have to happen. I think that there are some issues that have to be dealt with. I think that no one company can have these extensive incentives. We have incentive programs which are given to many companies. As a matter of fact, now we are trying to have some of these incentives be extended to small, medium enterprises. So I think it is good, but we have to calculate those to see what is beneficial for us and how long. Because all investors apply for fiscal incentives and the like.
But if the definitive agreement is approved under revision, can the South handle a port of that magnitude? Here is what the minister responded.
I will say that we have to look at the capacity that we have for the amount of cruise passengers that we have. I have always said that if the tourism industry is telling us for years that one type of tourism is better than the other, then maybe we should promote the other more than one. So if overnight tourism is better than cruise ship tourism, then that's the way we should go. But it is something that we have to plan. It can't be a 5-year plan. It can't be a government of the day plan. It has to be a long-term plan.
I think their goal is for 1 million tourists annually. Do you think Belize can handle that capacity if we have Portico and then we also have State Bank or whatever?
I think we can for that number, maybe more than that we might not be able to, but we will have to work on other things like upgrading the infrastructure, moving out from that port into Belize City, from Belize City spreading out to where the visitor sites are. We have to increase the number of visitor sites because we can't rely on the current number of visitor sites because those will not be sufficient. And if you overutilize them, then we have an overkill on those sites, and we don't want that. So there are several ministries that will have to be involved because some of those visitor sites, for example, would be in the forest, so the forest department, protected areas, if there are any areas that have been designated protected areas but have some tourist capacity and we can sort of designate that, then the National Biodiversity Office, the Ministry of Education, because they're in charge of niche, so you have the Mayan temples, you have caves. So there are several ministries that have to come to look at it and very closely, along with the Ministry of Tourism, of course.
Over the past few weeks, there have been a couple blackouts and electricity shortages across the country. On Wednesday, BEL issued a press release stating that unprecedented hot and humid weather intercepted with isolated lightnings and thunderstorms have been causing high levels of electricity usage overall. This then leads to supply disruption in certain parts of the system. Today, representatives of BEL hosted a press conference to further explain the situation, which they say Belizeans can help to mitigate.
The press release that was done yesterday was basically intended to advise customers, not to alert, but to advise customers that, our system is in a present state of vulnerability that we hadn't seen before, and to assure the customers that, if there's any brief interruption of power, that BL has put in place contingency measures to make sure that we restore it as soon as possible. Okay. There's two conditions that are really putting a little bit of concern on our part, which is the vulnerability of the transmission line that connects us to Mexico and the shortfall in generation, in-country generation, that we have to deal with the growing need of electricity in the country. In the north, we have a situation where we had already started doing maintenance work on that line. And because we interrupted that flow of supply, we were depending almost 90% on our in-country resources. And then we had this situation with one of our biggest plants in the south. And because of that, we had to pull back those works. And with the recent storms and the change in weather that is happening right now, we're a little bit concerned that, the vulnerability of that line can cause the system to collapse, right? As we have seen a couple times already. I know that normally our customers are not used to having, so frequent interruptions. And we don't want them to think that, the sky is falling, right? So our main message is, just be prepared. BEL is, we have taken steps to mitigate those conditions. And that if they can assist us in managing the peak demand, especially during the afternoon hours, that will go a long way, right?
Using electricity in a conscious manner, according to General Manager in the Energy Supply and Transmission Division, Jose Moreno, can go a very long way.
I am not an expert actually in energy, but I did some work and some studies that we did in the middle 90s. I can remember that we had about 30% of our demand comes from refrigeration and air conditioning, right? That type of activity is not only triggered by temperature, but is triggered by humidity. So if you notice, our peak demand doesn't happen during April when the temperatures are high, it happens now when the humidity starts to rise, right? So it takes a little more, right? Even if you stand in front of the fan, it doesn't cool you as quickly as, if we had a dry, hot day, right? Because it is driven by humidity. So we're asking, we are not telling customers, stop from doing what you need to do. You need to open your business. You need to continue doing your activities. What we ask is, if your kids are watching TV and they leave the room, stop the TV, stop the fan. Because at the end of the day, all of those little activities add up and do make an impact on the demand that we're seeing.
Despite these challenges, BEL says consumers should not fret about the possibility of an increase in their light bill.
BEL has always encountered this type of challenges in the past, and the company has always strived to, manage the cost of power. We always try to make sure that every day when we dispatch the cheapest sources of electricity. We have saved water, for example, to dispatch at this time of the year when the Mexican prices are starting to see an increase. Right? They have a different type of market than us, right? Most of our PPAs are set. But in the case of our agreement with CFE, we have what you call an opportunity type of contract, whereby we buy at the price that they sell for the day, for the hour. Right? So the way they establish their prices is that not all their sources of electricity are the same price, right? As you start going through the day and seeing a rise in demand, they have to dispatch their most expensive units, and therefore the impact of those costs on the overall cost at the end of the day, will drive that cost. So when we get an offer 2 days before the actual transaction, it's not static, right? Normally, those are going to be a little bit more expensive during the peak demand times, right? In the afternoon, at night. Okay. So we try to dispatch those as, in order for us to manage the cost of power as best as we can.
And with that's the news, we invite you to join us for another newscast on Friday, June 9th here on CTV3 and Fiesta FM 106.7. Remember that to read a text version of the news, you can visit our website at ctv3belizenews.com. You can also log on to our Facebook page for current stories at facebook.com/ctv3belizenews or our YouTube channel at ctv3newsbz. Remember to wash your hands and remain safe. From all of us here at CTV3 News, thank you for watching and listening. Good night.